In this video, I'm going to talk about why I think Oleksandr Usyk is a top 5 heavyweight of all time. And I know for many they might go, "Urgh, I hate you." But this is just simply an opinion. And also, I want people to understand just how amazing the achievement Oleksandr Usyk just recently did. If you're not aware, Oleksandr Usyk just defeated the WBC heavyweight champion who was undefeated, Tyson Fury. He's had some amazing title reigns. He'd won the fight against Vladimir Klitschko when Klitschko was undefeated, wins it in kind of a stinker, but he did win the fight. Joshua kind of stole his thunder and knocked him out in a more exciting fight in a fashion a few years after. And Tyson Fury was involved in one of the greatest heavyweight trilogies ever against Deontay Wilder. That being said, Usyk defeated Fury, who's the naturally bigger man, which is quite impressive. But before we get into that, I want to say, if this is your first time to the channel, be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like the channel, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to leave your comments about what you agree and disagree with in this video. So, Oleksandr Usyk, and I know for a professional you're not supposed to talk about the amateur accolades, but he comes in with an Olympic gold medal. So that already kind of propels you and sets the trajectory higher than most. Although if we look at all the Olympic gold medalists from the 2020 Olympics, the 2016 Olympics, and the 2012 Olympics, you will be startled to see how many of those gold medal Olympians underachieved and how fighters who didn't achieve nearly as much at the Olympics actually became better professionals. So that's something just as a footnote that you should know. He was a gold medal in heavyweight, which is actually cruiserweight in the Olympics. Then, after a little bit of a run, let's go into his title defenses. And now I'm like super awkward because I thought I had this all queued up. Thought I'd do this super professionally, and now I'm at a loss for words. So his first title was against Glowacki. I always say his name wrong, Glowacki. And he went to Glowacki's hometown in 2016 and soundly outpointed him, right? But once again, this is part of the greatness component of Usyk. It's his first world title shot. He goes to the champion's backyard. Not always a big puncher, quote-unquote big puncher. He's a guy that goes to the scorecards. He wants to win a world title. He goes on the road, wins a world title in a fight that I think a lot of people would be like, well, that's not very appealing. Goes, wins the title. Okay, vastly superior. Next two title defenses, I think, kind of speak to the legacy component. And these are deep dive, nerdy stuff. He fights Michunu in the forum and actually stops him. For those unaware, Michunu, and now I got to do my box rec thing where I bring it up and all this, and hopefully it's there. No, it's not even there. So I didn't even do my research right. But Michunu recently fought Makabu on a Don King card, and I think a lot of people, some of the spectators, some of the viewers thought he should have won it. He's been a very dangerous kind of Sakio Bika-like figure of the cruiserweight division. He's been a very avoided and known to give people very, very hard and tough fights. That was the first person Oleksandr Usyk went in and decided to defend his title against, which kind of speaks to the champion he is, because oftentimes after people win a title, especially going into foreign soil or hostile territory, they might look, and rightfully so, for a softer touch. Usyk decided instead of doing that, he was going to go in with a guy that's kind of largely avoided and went on to actually have a good career after that. His second defense was against Michael Hunter, a fellow Olympian from a prior class, who also, strangely, has not had the career I expected him to have, but has been a very solid professional who has very underrated wins, like a win over Martin Bacoli and such. He went in there and soundly defeated Michael Hunter in a fight that, once again, I think a lot of people viewed that in the build-up as, okay, Usyk is probably a favorite, but this is a very competitive and interesting fight. So two very good title defenses to start his reign. And then I believe it's like the start, around this time, we have the start of the tournament, the Ali Trophy Cruiserweight tournament, which allows for the unification, because through my memory, I believe all the champions entered the tournament and the goal was unification. He beats Marco Huck, Captain Hook, a long reigning cruiserweight champion, but if we're going to be honest, at that time, Marco Huck, or Hook, I think they called him Captain Hook, Marco Hook, wasn't the same guy. Lukie, if I remember right, and I'm not doing my research, but I believe it was Lukie or someone of that nature, had beaten Hook, and his dominance and dominant reign was no longer what it once was. But he defeated Hook. He actually stopped him, and that was his opening. Then he goes to Latvia to fight our guy who just fought this weekend, Marius Bradis. And in that fight, it's a split decision. It's a close fight. It's probably the closest fight of his career. This fight happened 6 years ago, and Marius Bradis has been one of the trickiest operators in this division. And once again, Usyk goes into hostile territory, fights Bradis in his hometown, and this is coming off of, I just did my half-baked research, fighting Marco Hook in Germany, which was Hook's hometown. So he's going back-to-back hometown fights, beats Bradis, close fight. You might go, well, did he really win? Did he get a gift decision? He was in the other guy's hometown. I remember thinking Usyk had pulled it off, and when you look at BoxRec's scoring app, which is by no means a foolproof system, but at least it allows fans to participate, and I think the fans that do participate give fairly accurate scores that reflect the fights that they saw. The fans had Usyk winning that fight. So that's another very tough opponent that he fought in that opponent's hometown with kind of little reward because people didn't go, oh my God, this guy Usyk, he just unified 2 titles. He fought this tough guy in his hometown. Pretty unnoticed in America, and it kind of flew under the radar for most people. Follows this up with, in 2018, it was July, and I remember watching this fight, and it was on Wealth TV. It's right kind of before the DAZN era of boxing, if I remember right. And it was a unification, undisputed fight, actually, for all 4 bouts. And he fought Murat Gassiev. Gassiev at the time was training with Abel Sanchez. Abel Sanchez was one of the most popular trainers at the time because, first off, he's a tremendous interview. And second off, he had one of the best fighters of that era in Gennady Golovkin. So on top of being a great interview, he also happened to have one of the most relevant fighters in Gennady Golovkin. So Gassiev, Usyk was looked at as a 50-50 fight on paper, maybe 60-40 weighted to Usyk, but the power of Gassiev was very real. What happens? Usyk skunks him in his hometown or home country of Russia. Goes in there 120, 108, 119, 109. It is nothing short of a one-sided boxing lesson. And what happens to Gassiev's career after this is basically a lot of inactivity. He was looked at as a guy that might be involved in the launch of DAZN and a heavyweight debut, and a lot of inactivity, infrequent fighting, and then recently lost to Otto Wallin, and that win actually got Otto Wallin the Anthony Joshua fight. So after this fight, Gassiev's career never recovered, which is part of what makes a great fighter, is they have also a great win that causes a lot of damage to one fighter where they're never able to get over. And it's not physical damage, it's like an emotional damage of you were in a fight with a guy that was viewed as your contemporary and you just weren't competitive to the point where it had lasting impacts on your career. After that fight, we get a Tony Bellew fight. Usyk's competitive with him but knocks him out. And then we get kind of like the watered down performances of Usyk. I think these are the performances that most people had seen, which were truly not his best performances against Chaz Witherspoon and against Derek Chisora. I think this is a lot of people's first introduction because his cruiserweight run was really like on obscure channels and not very easy to see. This was followed by the Anthony Joshua fight. He goes on the road once again to Tottenham Hotspur Stadium or whatever it is. Big crowd and outboxes Anthony Joshua, wins the fight on hostile soil, giving up a lot of height, giving up a lot of weight. And it was also the battle of the 2012 heavyweight Olympic gold medalist versus the 2012 Olympic super heavyweight gold medalist. Fun little fact, the gold medalists competing as pros, and Usyk kind of outclassed Anthony Joshua in that fight. A lot of people were critical. Why didn't Joshua use his size on him? Second fight, he enlists Robert Garcia. It's like, okay, maybe something will change. Usyk still is able to adjust and beat Anthony Joshua on 2 different occasions. A very good fighter who had faced criticism for fighting guys who had fluidity. He's always had a little bit of problems with fluid fighters, such as Andy Ruiz, who was able to roll, land that big, terrific punch that knocked him out. But I always thought, or at least recently, that Josh was a lot better than the criticism was ever conveyed to him. He just fought Usyk, who's an all-time great, and he's simply not at that level of all-time great. He's a great heavyweight. He's not an all-time great heavyweight. And on his rise to returning to the sport, he ran into Usyk, who was the man of the era. And he had 2 losses to him. And that, I think, might define some of this kind of comeback era for Joshua. Then, we get the Daniel Dubois fight for Usyk. That was last year. Usyk gets hit in the balls. A lot of people go, oh, it should have been called a body shot. He should have been stopped. Usyk acts like he got hit in the balls. If the ref probably started counting, he probably would have gotten up at 8, boxed a little bit, and then stopped him the way he did. That was also one of the fights that was actually closer to where he's from. Ukraine is actually at war. So that was his first time actually having a hometown fight, which might have also conveyed a little bit of nerves that it's harder for him to fight at home and it's easier to fight on the road. Then this last Saturday beats Tyson Fury. Massive, well, I wouldn't say massive. He was an underdog to a certain extent. A lot of people favor Tyson Fury. And he kind of did something great fighters do. He's winning the early parts, has to adjust because it looked like Fury was on his way to stopping him. And then he nearly stops him in the 9th round, goes on to beat him. Fantastic performance by Usyk. And now he's beaten the best guys of his era. He's beaten Joshua twice, and he's beaten Fury once, and he has a potential chance to beat Fury twice to really cement his legacy in the sport. So, to me, Usyk is no doubt better than Evander Holyfield. And I think that for a lot of people, that tugs at their nostalgia. And so a lot of 30, 40, and even 50-year-old men remember watching Evander Holyfield. And Holyfield on television was a fun action fighter that was really exciting. And it really meant a lot his fights meant a lot. And as we get older, I think we cloud our judgment on what things really were. Like you hear guys go to bars or go to hang out and they talk about how things used to be. I remember being 16 and hearing these type of stories when I'd go out skateboarding. And I'd always go, well, why don't we do that now? Because it's not like we're that old. But it's a form of comfort, right? To say like, oh yeah, Holyfield's better than Usyk. Usyk can't beat him. Because you don't have to have a debate. You don't have to think about these things deeply, right? You can just simply say, oh, the guy from the previous generation's better, right? But if you look at it for skill, Usyk just has more tools. Now, Holyfield's tool was a fantastic tool, and he was a hell of a fighter. Their 1 and 2 is the greatest heavyweight, cruiserweight combo because they both did something that's never seen. I just have to favor the guy that went into other people's hometowns every friggin' fight and got the job done in various different ways. To me, that's just a tad bit more impressive than what Holyfield did. But Holyfield's an outstanding fighter. Leave a comment on your thoughts. So for me, in terms of the heavyweight debate, I'm going to give you my top 5 heavyweights right now. And you can tell me what you think and what you don't think. For me, 1 and 2 have to be Muhammad Ali. Let me say that again. For me, 1 and 2 have to be Joe Louis and Muhammad Ali. You can pick whatever order you want, but the cultural significance, the technique they showed, and the resume they have are second to none. So those 2 have to go at the top of the list. Once we get those out of the way, could be my nostalgia that I was talking about, but I have to put Lennox Lewis at 3. Lennox emerged from what I feel in my childhood eyes was the greatest heavyweight era of Mike Tyson, Riddick Bowe, Evander Holyfield. Lennox Lewis was the guy that emerged as the greatest guy from that era. So Lennox Lewis, to me, is my number 3 because I've never seen a heavyweight before or after like him. Yes, he lost, but he always came back like a champion. And he was a formidable fighter who imposed himself. Now, this is where people might punch their YouTube TV screens. I got Oleksandr Usyk as the 4th best heavyweight of all time, ahead of a lot of great fighters. And it's simply based on the run he is on, the willingness to fight in other people's countries, and the ability to get the job done in so many different ways. To me, he is a top 5 heavyweight, without a shadow of a doubt. That could change if he loses a fight here and there, but I really don't think it will. He's one of the greatest heavyweights ever, and I think time will look back fondly on this career that he's had. My number 5, and this is probably also a homer pick, I'm a big fan of Larry Holmes, and I always grew up liking Larry because he was kind of a figure that was misunderstood and a guy that people didn't ever really appreciate in his time. And it didn't hurt that when I was growing up, VHS tapes of Larry Holmes were a lot cheaper than VHS tapes of Mike Tyson highlights. So watching VHS tapes of Larry Holmes' greatest hits, I could get those. Maybe my mom could get them a little cheaper. So Larry Holmes for me is the 5th greatest heavyweight. I could see somebody take an exception, but those are the top 5 heavyweights in my opinion. After those, we got a lot of really good guys that I think fit that back end. You could put Mike Tyson there. You could put Evander Holyfield. Vladimir Klitschko could fit the bill. George Foreman could fit. Joe Frazier could fit in there. There's a lot of really good fighters. You could even say Riddick Bowe, who I think is very comparable to Tyson Fury, where they had these short bursts of moments where they looked like the greatest heavyweight ever, but they couldn't sustain it. And that's part of the greatness of Usyk is Usyk's on an 8-year run of championship level boxing. I know Inoue is on a 10-year run of being a champion, but Usyk's doing this at a division or divisions that are known for power punching. And I think that's quite remarkable. So to me, Oleksandr Usyk is the 4th best heavyweight of all time. In the comments, please let me know if you agree or disagree.